They are agile, adaptive. They are curiouser and curiouser. They are quantastic, so on and so forth, right? In fact, they have actually gone to say that they are unicorns, right? Isn't it? You know, and you understand what the idea of unicorn is. But lo behold, still, the best part is still to come. It actually takes one to know one. If you don't see this any of the person around you, it just means you are not that. What do you get out of this? What kind of a sense do you get about the feeling that data scientists want to create about themselves? When I started an analytics organization, possibly about a decade and a half back, I would just tell people I work in the analytics space and they start looking at, you know, slightly above my head, where is the halo? You must be so smart. Right? At that age, it really felt good. I could basically, yeah, I'm very smart, right? It was a learning exercise for me of a very, very different order there, right? But then let's continue with that. So I say that they are unicorns, you know, they are the unicorns of the 21st century, and they all do magic, right? We have loads of understanding of that magic. The target pregnancy one, we all know that story, right? The father coming fuming, saying that you are sending these promo materials about pregnancy to my daughter, who is not even 18, only to be told that, hey, listen, Target knows more than you do, right? But this was still discovery, right? It was possibly not really a science behind that. But this is certainly science. Netflix, right? While they do the thing that if you are basically watching the preview of a particular show, they will know who you are and basically show you a version of the preview that you will like, right? But more importantly, I'm sure you would have seen that way of that House of Cards and how they bet everything on it, knowing that they will succeed. For the people who are Hindi movie buff from the Amitabh Bachchan generation, right? I'm much older than I look, right? So I have to claim that I'm a buff. And there was a rerun of Trishul that I came to see some days back. And there, that Sanjeev Kumar dialogue is that it is not that he said that he could get that land vacated. It is that he knew that he could get that land vacated and get the money in time. Right? So that is what analytics can do to you. Data scientists can do, right? They can be the Amitabh Bachchans of this era as well. Same thing. They're talking about the diapers and the beer, right? I have had long discussions around what does it mean. How can you use this particular information? But that's not the idea. Again, it's a discovery part here. If you know this whole Walmart and strawberry Pop-Tarts, somehow they found that during hurricanes, the sale of this goes away. They have about 5 to 8 days to predict this. So if they have a prediction of hurricane, they will actually go and stock strawberry Pop-Tarts on the shelf. They don't know why it happens, but the outcome is very, very pleasant, right? Then, of course, the Moneyball. You all have seen that particular movie. Now, that is science, right? That fat-looking guy in that movie was actually the data scientist that we all see that unicorns has, right? But from the idea of the data scientist, I can answer that particular question, or you can answer that particular question, that am I a data scientist? Can I relate to that particular role? I would assume that most of you will nod yes, right? But for some of you who can't nod or nod positively for this, I have another one for the rest of the world. You know, have you ever worked with one? Have you basically, do you think that you can do what they do? Do you think that the skills are valuable to you? But at the end of all of this, there is one simple question that I cannot basically deny. The idea of data scientists might be about, you know, unicorns. But this idea relates to each one of us. Is analytics about data scientists, or is it about scientific decision making? Yep. Now, if we are talking about this, then you would also possibly wonder as to why am I talking about this? Because it's not a very simple thing that we are talking about here. Like various sources say that we make about $35,000 decisions per day, right? You would have seen those WhatsApp pushes into saying that who says I don't work out, I jump to conclusion, that whole obnoxious forward that we see, but it's obnoxious because it hurts, but that's what we do. But at the end of this, if you see, prioritizing and reflecting, it is just one of the 6 ways in which you can make. So you start making some sense here at the balance where you are weighing different options and making a choice. But the challenge is that we basically use most of our decisions based on this, right? I have a small video to show you as well on this. So let's see if I can play. Now, why does this happen is basically because of this. I'll give you one simple example, and some of you who are basically TED fans like I am, you would have possibly seen that particular piece as well, as to that if you have a $50 bill in your pocket and a $50 symphony ticket, okay? You reach the symphony theater or the venue, and you realize that you have lost your ticket. Would you use that $50 to buy the new ticket? Versus, you didn't buy the ticket, you had two $50 bills in your pocket, you reached the venue, you lost one of the $50 bill. Would you buy the ticket and watch the symphony? Surprisingly, the answers are very different in both of them. So it's not necessarily that we are logical in our thinking when we think about anything around us. So, right? That is one part of the challenge here. Right? There is obviously a lot of information which is missing, but we don't miss that particular information. Obviously, there are incomplete contexts that add to the, means even if you try, you will not get all the, Then of course, limited skills to make decision making. People don't like to be embarrassed or shamed. I have a very, very profound theory here, that the intelligence is a zero-sum game. For every insightful, intelligent decision that you present to your management or present to anybody else, there is an equally stupid person sitting there ruining that particular thing that, hey, listen, this makes me look so stupid. When I started doing work in analytics, that was my biggest challenge. And that time, people would not, feel it was wrong to say. But then if you do all of this and you make those decisions, it will prove that all this while I was being stupid. And you want me to pay for that? Right? So the people basically will always be more happy, or people will not buy the new ticket for the $50 that they have in their pocket, because they will feel that the cost of that particular ticket is $100 now. Versus if you lost just a $50 bill, the cost of ticket still remains at $50, because you are paying $50 to buy it. $50 you lost because you were stupid. Make sense? Second set of people will buy. Second set, I'm saying that, so the difference, I don't know if you understood, that you did not have you bought a ticket and lost a ticket. You went without a ticket and lost a $50, and you buy a fresh ticket. You never bought a ticket before that. Right? Since you bought it before, you have already associated $50 to this, and second $50 will again get associated to that. Versus in the next one, because you did not buy the thing and you lost $50 as $50 absolutely, the ticket is still $50. There are hordes of that. The other example is what wine stores do. They always have in the US wines ranging from $15, $25, and $45. The number of people who buy the $45 wine is minuscule. It just doesn't justify that particular thing to stay there. Carrying cost of that will not justify. They remove that, the number of people buying the $25 wine drops sharply. Right? There are millions of examples. There is the things around the whole Scandinavian example of where they said that for organ donation, there was a form where they could opt in to donate their organ versus they could opt out from the organ donation scheme or organization permission, the number remained the same, how many people tick that particular box. But now we are talking about 90% in favor of people who are choosing to donate their organs after, their death, versus 10% of the people who are choosing it. So I'm just kind of demonstrating that we don't necessarily always make logical decisions. And that is the reality in business as well. We need to understand that particular part very, very clearly. That is why I'm basically talking about this whole thing here, right? And the challenge with collaborating, that it makes the decision even difficult.
Does that mean that you can write the decisions in your favor just how you present them?
So can I see that bag? Yeah? You read that piece, right? You read that piece, right? If we have data, let's look at data. If we all we have our opinions, let's go with mine. I loved it. I actually tweeted it. I was so impressed. Because that is the reality that we live with, right? Now I want to bring another part which is what I enjoy the most, and that is talking about learning. To shock you all, I will tell you one simple thing, that we are no different from a single cell organism, the paramecium, the algae or all of those, in terms of our learning. We behave the same way as them as far as learning goes. I will give you the example of dinosaurs. They felt that they were so superior, they were so full of themselves that they could basically dominate the world. And they kept changing, they kept evolving. It was not that they remained what they were, right? But they did not even see one step ahead. And where did learning take them? To their own extinction. We don't know, we have not learned to learn. I will ask you a very simple question here now. Without giving me an outcome, motivation, reason, process, approach, can you tell me what is learning? That is the motivation. That is the trigger for learning. If you remain curious, you haven't learned. Or, if you don't remain curious, you haven't learned either. It's a physiological, it is a metaphysical, it is a metaphor that we're learning, and it's a very complicated metaphor. I'm still trying to find the best answer, but I can live with this. Learning is to change. If you haven't changed, you cannot claim that you have learned. Very, very simple. Do you think learning is a logical activity? Anyone? Is learning a logical activity? Is the process of learning a logical activity? The first of the theory of learning was called the learning paradox. And it said this: you can't learn something unless you already know it. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I can tell you that learning is not a logical activity. Change is not a logical activity. Now, I basically ask this particular thing. How often do you basically think you are learning consciously? I have this test of eureka moments. If you are not having a eureka moment at least once every day, you are not learning. You are not evolving. You are not letting what you have got consciously interact with what you know. Why am I talking about all of this? Because decision is no very different, right? In fact, I'll come to this as well. We talk about the Shuhari model, which is the theory that came from Japan, China, where they talk about that, unless you reach the level of challenging what you have known, you will not ever be the master, right? So that Master Shifu that we talk about, that is what. And it's not that they challenge it for themselves, they challenge it for everyone. They stand at a challenge it for you as well. The biggest of the masters, the biggest of the people find it very difficult to answer that particular part, right? So the decision is no very different process, you know. What is to decide? Most of the time we don't even know that particular thing. Means, I can elaborate that, but in the interest of time and having some questions, I want to kind of, you know, how do you decide? Is that a logical process? All of that. What I want to take you to is this particular thing. What we talk about, the whole idea of the hierarchy of learning, where we talk about the conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. It's a very powerful theory. What I have taken the liberty, and I just leave it for you to understand that, is that you have an equal thing if you just kind of change incompetence to indecision and decision. You will be amazed at how this whole thing actually makes. So we are talking about unconscious indecisions, conscious indecisions, you know, conscious decisions, unconscious decisions. This is where you are talking about the re part, but the double-edged sword that you have to be aware of is that we assume that without going through that whole process, we go to that place, we jump to that place straight away. The best way to understand this is to basically look at some of the best players in any of the sport. Like let's say Roger Federer, can he pick a guy with all the required physical capability, mental capability, and train that person to be himself? You need to get here to be able to do that. Think of all the greats, how much time they take to basically make that particular thing transition from being a player to a coach.